It started on a rainy Tuesday, the kind that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. I'd taken a few days off work to clear out my late parents' house, an aging, ivy-wrapped structure tucked into the woods just outside town, the kind of place that creaks even when no one's walking. The air inside smelled faintly of mothballs and old books. Dust floated in slow-motion spirals through the slivers of gray light. I spent most of the morning boxing up forgotten trinkets, peeling through yellowed photo albums, and trying not to think too hard about the silence. No TVs, no cars passing by, just the occasional groan of floorboards and the wind teasing the shutters. That's when I found it, hidden beneath a loose plank in my childhood bedroom, my old diary, a navy blue hardcover with a tiny rusted lock, the kind I used to pretend would keep out monsters. I almost laughed, but the laughter stuck in my throat when I flipped to the first page. In my 8-year-old handwriting, messy and uneven, were the words, "On October 17th, you will die in this house." My birthday, October 17th, tomorrow. I stared at the words, my breath caught somewhere between a laugh and a choke. I had no memory of writing that. Maybe it was a game, something morbid I'd picked up from too many horror movies. Kids make up weird things, right? Still, I tucked the diary into my jacket pocket, telling myself it was just a coincidence. But the house, it didn't feel the same after that. The air felt heavier, as if the walls were leaning in, listening. Later that evening, as I boxed up the last of my mother's porcelain figurines, I heard it, a soft scuffling sound from upstairs. Not footsteps exactly, more like someone dragging their fingers along the wall. Slow, deliberate. I froze, straining to hear more. Silence, then the hallway light above me flickered, just once. I waited, nothing. When I finally went to check, the upstairs hallway was empty, but I noticed something strange. The mirror at the end of the corridor, an antique oval framed in tarnished silver, was fogged over, as if someone had just breathed on it. But the house was cold. I could see my breath. I hadn't been upstairs all day, and I lived alone now. That night, sleep felt like an impossible idea. I lay on the worn-out mattress in my childhood room, the diary resting on the nightstand like a loaded gun. The wind had picked up outside, hissing through the cracked window panes, making the old trees groan against the dark. Around 2 a.m., I heard a faint tap, 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 like fingernails on glass. I sat up, heart thudding. It was coming from the hallway mirror. I crept to the doorway and peered out. At first, nothing. Just the dim shape of the mirror at the end of the hall, faintly reflecting the soft amber glow from the nightlight plugged into the wall. But then, something moved. A smudge, no, a silhouette. I stepped closer, each board beneath me creaking like it was warning me away. The mirror's surface shimmered faintly, as though something behind it was shifting. I reached out. My hand met cold glass, but my reflection didn't mimic me. It stood there still, watching, smiling. I stumbled back, breath caught in my throat. The reflection remained for a heartbeat longer, then vanished in a blink. When I checked again, only my pale, shaking face stared back. And on the diary's page, a new sentence had appeared. "You saw me. Morning came, but it brought no comfort." The sunlight filtering through the blinds felt weak, as if the house refused to let the day in. I couldn't shake the image from the mirror, myself standing still while I recoiled. I kept telling myself it was a trick of exhaustion, but deep down, I knew better. Driven by a mix of fear and obsession, I went back to the attic, a place I'd avoided since I was a kid. It was darker than I remembered, the single window crusted with grime. As I rummaged through old boxes, one caught my eye, unlabeled, pushed far into the corner, sealed with black duct tape. Inside were dozens of drawings, childish, frantic sketches in crayon. All of them showed a figure, tall, faceless, watching, sometimes standing by the mirror, sometimes beside a bed that looked exactly like mine. At the bottom of the box, wrapped in yellowing newspaper, was a Polaroid. Me, 8 years old, standing in front of the hallway mirror. But my reflection, it wasn't right. It was taller, grinning. That's when I heard it again. This time not from the hallway. From the mirror in my room. I barely slept the next night. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps just out of sight. I unplugged the hallway nightlight. Its soft glow had started to feel like an invitation, and covered the mirror with an old bedsheet, though I wasn't sure it would help. But even then, I could hear it breathing. Not the mirror, something behind it. Shallow, slow inhales, like lungs straining through glass. By morning, I was unraveling. I kept catching movement in my peripheral vision. Shadows darting behind doors that shouldn't be open, reflections that didn't match what I was doing. Once in the bathroom, I looked up from the sink and saw myself still staring down. I stumbled back, hitting the towel rack, only to find the reflection had caught up, perfectly in sync again. I started questioning everything. Had I really found that diary? Did I write the death date in some childhood haze? Were the drawings mine? My hands trembled constantly now, my thoughts scattered. Then I noticed something even worse. The diary. The pages were no longer in my handwriting. And each morning a new entry appeared. Today's read, "You'll try to leave tonight. You won't make it past the stairs." Nightfall wrapped the house in suffocating darkness. I tried to leave, packed a bag, shoved the diary inside, and turned the knob. The stairs groaned beneath me like a beast stirring awake. Halfway down, the temperature dropped so sharply, my breath fogged in the stale air. That's when I heard it, a voice, soft, barely a whisper, but unmistakable. "Don't go." It slithered through the walls, wrapping around my spine like icy fingers. Frozen, I glanced back up the staircase. In the dim hallway light, the mirror was no longer covered, and inside it, the faceless figure stood waiting. Heart hammering, I ripped the bedsheet away, expecting to see the empty reflection, but instead there was the diary, lying open as if it had never left, pages fluttering like wings. The last written line glowed faintly on the page. "To break free, you must face what watches behind the glass." The realization hit me like a blow. This was no ordinary haunting. The mirror wasn't just a surface, it was a gateway. I had no choice. The house, the diary, the figure, they were all connected. And tonight, I would meet whatever waited behind the glass. I swallowed the fear, knotting my throat, and stepped closer to the mirror. The glass rippled like dark water, swallowing the hallway's light. From its depths, the faceless figure emerged, its form shifting. Sometimes a child's silhouette, sometimes an impossibly tall shadow with empty, hollow eyes. "Why?" I demanded, voice trembling. "Why me? Why this house?" It raised a hand, and in an instant, I was no longer in the hall but trapped inside the mirror itself, an endless void where my own reflection fractured into countless shards, each whispering secrets I couldn't fully grasp. "I am the shadow of your past," it said, voice like distant thunder. "A curse born from forgotten sins, bound to this place by your family's blood." The diary was a warning and a contract. Panic surged as I realized the diary wasn't just predicting death. It was ensuring it. The figure's presence was a debt I inherited, an inescapable fate written long before I was born. "Escape is an illusion," it murmured, reaching toward me with cold fingers that felt like frostbite. "But to accept the shadow is to be free. Choose." My chest tightened. To fight meant losing myself. To surrender was death. And as the void closed in, I understood. This was the price of secrets buried too deep. As the shadow's cold fingers brushed my skin, a sudden flash pierced the void. My childhood bedroom, years ago. I saw myself, younger, clutching that very diary, tears streaming down my face. But the truth hit harder than any ghost. I wasn't just the victim. I was the origin. The diary wasn't a warning from the past. It was a trap I had set for myself. In my fractured memories, I recalled a terrifying secret I had buried deep, a night of rage and darkness when I hurt someone close. The shadow wasn't a stranger haunting my family. It was the manifestation of my own guilt, twisted and eternal. Every drawing, every ominous message, it was my mind trying to confess, to punish. The mirror didn't trap me. It reflected the part of me I denied, the part I tried to lock away. The diary wasn't predicting death, it was summoning it. And now, as the void whispered, I realized the most terrifying truth. The shadow was waiting not for me to die, but for me to remember. Because some deaths don't come from the outside. They come from within. I stood frozen in that endless void, the shadow's presence pressing into my skin like icy smoke. Memories surged, fractured dark flashes I had tried to bury. The diary's pages fluttered violently, as if alive, whispering words I could almost understand but dared not. Then the mirror cracked, a spiderweb of fractures spreading out, distorting my reflection until it was unrecognizable. The shadow's voice softened, almost gentle. Or be lost. I reached out, trembling, trying to grasp the shards of my fractured self, but the edges cut deep. Pain bloomed, physical and soul deep. A scream clawed up my throat, but the void swallowed it before it could escape. Suddenly I jolted awake, back in my bed, drenched in sweat. The diary lay closed beside me, its lock broken. I dared not open it. The room was silent, the mirror just a mirror. But then from the corner of my eye I caught a flicker, a shadow slipping just out of reach. I'm still here, but so is it. And deep down I know, the story isn't over. Not by a long shot. Got a story? Email nightshadenote8149@gmail.com. Like, subscribe, and sleep with the lights on. Until next time, stay in the shadows.